right, welcome to Expert Insights, brought to you by DHM Marketing. We are here to explore real-world stories, strategies, and smart thinking shaping Salesforce's success today. So today we're diving into a topic that doesn't always get the attention probably that it deserves: Salesforce security. It's one of the areas that only becomes visible when something kind of goes wrong, but it's fundamental to every Salesforce customer success. To help us unpack it, I'm joined by Doug Merrett, founder and principal consultant at Platinum 7. Doug spent more than a decade at Salesforce working across APAC and the UK as a platform and security specialist. Since then, he's conducted over 70 Salesforce security assessments through Platinum 7, helping organizations across industries like financial services, government, healthcare, and utilities strengthen their environments. Doug's known for translating complex security challenges into practical steps businesses can take and for helping teams bridge the gap between technology and trust. Doug, great to have you with us.
Hey, thanks for being here, Trent.
Awesome. So, look, first cab off the rank. Like we said before, security doesn't always get front and center. And a lot of businesses assume that Salesforce, right out of the box, takes care with all their security, never have to think of it again. So, I mean, what have you seen? Where does that assumption fail?
Salesforce is a remarkably secure platform. Working inside the company, I know a lot about how the insides actually do work, and even more than is publicly known. But it has got some very, very powerful, very, very capable bits and pieces inside itself to actually make sure that Salesforce is kept very secure. The key thing is, though, it's a shared responsibility model, where Salesforce provides a whole bunch of capabilities, but you've got to turn them on and use them appropriately to actually make sure that your environment's secure.
As you say that, it brings back many conversations. Full transparency, I did work in the public sector team as a solution engineer at Salesforce for a couple of years. Shared responsibility is definitely key, because at the end of the day, even if your password's set to ABC123, that's probably a little bit of your responsibility than Salesforce's, right?
Totally agree. So yeah, Salesforce gives you a lot of capability to secure your environment, but you still got to make sure you implement it appropriately, and therein lies the rub. A lot of folks don't always spend the time to actually do that properly.
Look, a big thing that's come up recently that maybe a few people have seen across LinkedIn or the news potentially, are connected apps and app permissions inside of in an instance. I've seen some amazing Medium articles written by yourself on this topic. So yeah, would love to hear, what you're seeing currently, what's changed, and where you're seeing it going.
Well, Salesforce used to be auto-allow, where anybody could connect any OAuth app. Now, what does that really mean? Well, if you go to somewhere like dataloader.io, which is a Salesforce application to help you with moving data in and out of your Salesforce environment, it connects using OAuth. And so basically, it asks you to log in as it uses your login that you currently have, and it then gets all the permissions that you have. And so therefore, any data that you can see, it can also access. So that's what a connected app does. And the key problem with connected apps is that they have the permissions of the user that connected them. That makes perfect sense. The challenge is, though, it's an auto-allow. So people could connect any app they wanted. So Dodgy Dave's business card scanner could be used, and that would actually connect into the org, and it'll get all the permissions that you have. Now, if you're a customer service rep, you're probably able to see every contact in the org. Otherwise, you couldn't do your job. And so therefore, they're a perfect target for these sort of hackers. And so what happened in the past was, because Salesforce was auto-allow, the hackers managed to convince an employee of a contact center to actually connect a dodgy app. And so that's what happened. Now, Salesforce has changed that. They changed it to an auto block. So now you cannot connect any app that you want. If you want to have a connected app, you can try and log in. It'll just say, no, sorry, you can't connect. It'll get logged in your Salesforce environment, and you can go to see your admin and say, hey, admin, can you ask your security folks, is this app authorized? So is it valid? Have you done your due diligence on it? And if you have, then please turn it on and let me access it. And then one of the features of Salesforce is you can actually control who can use those connected apps. So there's a capability in there that says, instead of allow everybody, you want to allow only admin approved users. So you can approve users by either profiles or permission sets. So that's basically what Salesforce have done. They've just stopped people automatically being able to connect apps. If you've already got a connected app, you've already been using it, that's fine, you're grandfathered in, and it'll still keep working. But you really should go back through all of your connected apps and just verify that they are what you think they are and people are still using them, and are they providing business value. If they're not, block them. If they are, install them and then control who can use them by using profiles and permission sets.
That's a really good point, because I can think a lot about the time when I was a customer looking for, I guess, maybe point solutions on the App Exchange or applications that are passed around in forums potentially to enhance the functionality of Salesforce without having to maybe build it yourself or explore things that are outside of a product SKU in Salesforce's own pricing books. With these kind of apps, they seem to, they bring a lot of innovation to Salesforce instances, and they obviously improve productivity, hopefully, mostly. So even Dave's dodgy scanner can be useful in some sense. But in that regard, how do you balance the gains in productivity, or I guess the ability to add on applications like this with security? Because blocking everything 100% of the time is probably not very practical, but where do you see places that teams can remove the blind spots that they're having?
Yeah, great question. And one of the things I do think is key is to look at your different types of apps. So there are connected apps that are normally external applications connecting into your environment. And then there's actual apps off the App Exchange. Now, some of those are fully what they call on platform. So they're written in Salesforce Apex. They're using the Lightning Web Components. They're doing all that sort of stuff. And they run totally and solely inside your Salesforce org. They don't connect anything outside, etc., etc. And those ones are pretty safe. You've just got to make sure they're going to work properly and not screw up your data. But the point is, they're not going to be able to export anything outside because they don't have connections. The connected apps are really where you've got to think about things a bit more seriously. And also hybrid apps off the App Exchange that have both an installed part inside your org and maybe they connect to something outside. Like, for example, a postcode verification tool. You're not going to download the entire postcode dataset for Australia into Salesforce, right? It's going to be an external service that the internal app calls to verify the postcodes and that type of stuff. So that's a hybrid app. So hybrid app's just going to verify that you trust the hybrid app and has it got good security, is it written by people who are sensible, etc., etc. Whereas for connected apps, same sort of scenario. You've got to just verify who the other end is. So DataLoader.io is run by Salesforce with MuleSoft. That's probably okay. But Dodgy Dave's business card scanner, maybe not.
No, absolutely. That's actually a really good differentiation between some of the apps that you can have on your own Salesforce platform. Assessing whether or not that they're where they've come from and how they're installed and whether or not they're hybrid or external apps or internal apps. That's one probably checklist that I'm assuming is one of many that you go through security assessments. What are the other big findings that you normally find in Salesforce orgs as part of other items of those checklists?
Yeah, so most of my customers who I do an assessment for, the main problem I find with them is that they have API access granted to external applications, and then the user that is being used for that external application is a system admin. And that's really not good, because what you're doing is giving that external application either a connected app or something connecting in using the SOAP API or whatever. You're giving that particular application complete access to your Salesforce org. And technically, it could deactivate all of your users, modify all your data, extract all your data, and just basically take complete control of your org. And that's not going to be considered a breach by Salesforce because you let them in. So, it's something that you really should look at. So the vast majority of my users have got that issue. But if you've got communities or Salesforce digital experiences, which a lot of people do use because it's a very secure platform, but again, you've got to configure it correctly, because the vast majority of people who have communities that I've done assessments for, over 60% of them have misconfigured it. And of that misconfiguration group, the vast majority have set it up in a way that everybody can see everyone else's data, which is not good. And this isn't a guest user. This is actually certified people. So basically, you've given like a partner community, right? You let partners log in. You collaborate with them. So let's say you're a financial services customer. You've got brokers, right? Perfect use case for a Salesforce digital experience. So you're letting the brokers come in. They're looking at sort of stuff and misconfigured with a very, very simple hack. One of those authorized users could see everyone else's authorized users' information because of the public sharing model you've set up. And so everyone knows about sharing settings, right? You've got your public read write, etc. That's fine for internal users. For external, in my personal view, everything should be private, because you should only see the records you own or you're shared to allowed to see. That being said, knowledge base. Perfect use case to have that public read, because obviously you want everyone to be able to read the knowledge base. But vast majority of other objects like account, contact, case, etc. should all be private for external use. That's the key the thing I found. If you don't have it private, anybody who's got access to that object can see all the records in that object, which is what the problem is.
Some very happy brokers to a very extensive list of clients out there, I think. But
Yep.
Speaking of that, you mentioned the SOAP endpoints, and then there is a lot coming down the pipeline in the next couple of years about that and a couple of other things. I'm keen to get your forward-facing look into things like the ending of the SOAP API, the changes in security, what's coming next, what can people prepare for?
It's great. I think Salesforce are really taking a good leading step around actually making Salesforce environments more secure. So SOAP access, for those of you who don't know, it's a different way to log in. It's an API, so no human interaction, and you normally have to give them a username, password, and sometimes there's security token, which if you know about it, you know about it. If you don't, give me a call and I'll help you chat through. But basically,
Sure.
with the SOAP API, you have an external application that just sends a login request to Salesforce, passes across a username, password, and token, and gets back a session ID, and then can start using the API just like any other user could use the API. It just grants access. Now, the trouble with SOAP applications is you can't control them. With your connected apps or with the new version of them called external client apps, you can control them by using permissions sets and profiles and say who can use it and that sort of stuff. With SOAP, it's basically connecting in and away you go. So what you can do with that user is you could say this user can only log in from a certain IP address. So if you know where it's coming from and it's a limited IP range, you can actually put that range into Salesforce user just for that one user. Actually, on that point, every API connection should have its own user. And that way you can tell what that user's doing, but also you can control that user much more tightly. So you can really control what they can access by limiting the data access they have, but also you can put IP restrictions on, you could put login hours on, you can do that sort of stuff to stop it doing things. So the SOAP API, you can't control any other way except by just shutting the user down, pretty much, or changing the password. So SOAP API is a little bit hard to control, which is why Salesforce have decided to deprecate the SOAP login capability. SOAP is still there, but the login capability isn't there. What's going to happen is in the current release of the API, which came out with the winter release a couple of weeks back, it's version 65 of the API, the SOAP login doesn't work. With versions 31 to 64, all the ones that's still valid, it still will work until the middle of 2027, the winter release in 2027. So that means that you've got a couple of years now to actually fix all of your SOAP apps, to actually make them use a connected app. Now, you may think, I don't have any SOAP apps. Well, if you're using Microsoft Entra or Azure AD, as it used to be called, if you're using that for your single sign-on and you want to have it to automatically provision and deprovision users, you're using SOAP because the way that adapter is written, you use SOAP. And so therefore, please talk to Microsoft and say, hey guys, get with a current century and actually start using a connected app or an external client app.
That's great advice. I think I can definitely reflect on a couple of times where I've had panic calls from customers asking why that people that had left the organization are still making changes. So yeah, when you can see that last updated field being a shared user that has been used their API or SOAP credentials as well is probably an alarming stage for a lot of Salesforce users out there or admins. But outside of that, you've explained that really well, and I think I'd also like to get your take on what does things like moving to Hyperforce and the encrypt your entire database capabilities. Can you talk to us in practical terms exactly what that means?
Yeah, so everybody's database inside of Salesforce today is already encrypted at rest. So in the data center, if it's a Salesforce data center or an Amazon one with Hyperforce, your database is encrypted at rest anyway. So that's really good for security. So that means if someone breaks into the data center, they can't steal your data. Well, they can take the disks, but they won't be able to work out what the heck's on it, which is great. And on that side note, everyone's laptop should be encrypted at rest. Everyone's phone should be encrypted at rest because they're physical devices you can leave on the train. And so you want to make sure that people can't get into the data on that hard drive or solid state disk. So that's very important. Encrypting at rest saves that problem. Now, what Salesforce have done a while back is they had a product called Platform Encryption, which gave you control of the encryption key for certain fields in your Salesforce environment. So you can encrypt the contact name, the contact address, etc. Now, with that, it causes a slight problem in that it breaks some stuff inside of Salesforce. Because if you encrypt a field, you can no longer use that field in a where clause. So you can't stick it as a filter in a report or filter in a list view and that type of stuff. And you can't sort on it in a list view, and you can't sort on it via the API. You can't sort on it via Apex. So it does have some capability loss. But people needed to encrypt it and be in charge of the key. That's the actual sentence, which is the important part. be in control of the key. So if you don't need to be in control of the key, it's encrypted at rest now. Thumbs up, you're fine. The thing is, if you have a contract with one of your customers saying all your data that you give to me will be encrypted at rest and I'm in charge of the key, if you've got a sort of contract, then you've got to have platform encryption, and along with the current issues that I've just mentioned then. So what Salesforce are doing at the moment, they're rolling out a new capability on Hyperforce only, that if you have platform encryption, you can encrypt your whole org with the key, which you're in control of, which means you can turn off all the field level encryptions and get all the functionality back again, but still have control of the key, which means you're still compliant with your contract to your customer. In general, you don't have to be in control of the key for most compliance stuff, but your customers may have a contract with you. So this is a really good thing for people who have to be in control of the key for encryption, because Salesforce lets you do it across the whole org and it makes it just totally seamless. There's no capability loss. It just works, which is wonderful.
It's really interesting because I definitely can think of a few customers with contracts to other government organizations that are really focused on stuff like this. So that's a really interesting change. It sounds like there is a whole slather of new updates coming to the Salesforce ecosystem off the back of various things that have happened over the last few years that we're just accelerating towards a more secure environment. And from my perspective, it can only be emphasized in a more diverse landscape of security threats. Thanks for tuning into today's podcast. Doug and I had so much to cover that we've decided to split into two parts. In the first part, we explored the big shifts in Salesforce security. In part two, we'll switch gears and talk about what this means day to day, how to build strong security habits across your business, get your teams engaged, and make security your culture, not just a checklist.